welcome to Gluten-free. One of the most common questions that I am asked when people find out that I'm gluten-free is, are you allergic to it? And I always answer with, yep, because that's the easy answer. The major terms used in regards to the gluten-free diet are gluten intolerance, gluten allergy, wheat allergy, and celiac disease. Quite frankly, I can't figure out what the defining features of these things are. Celiac disease is an autoimmune disease, yes, but some of the major symptoms are the same as a gluten intolerance, and the treatment is the same, to eliminate gluten from the diet. And when it comes down to it, I don't really care either. To me, it doesn't matter what I have, I just know that I can't eat gluten, and if I do, then horrible things will happen to me. The follow-up question then becomes, what does it do to you? That is a perfectly legitimate question, but I tend not to give the whole story because it's gross and nobody wants to hear about these things. But I think it's important to start talking about it. The symptoms I were having were painful, but nobody ever talked about it, and I figured that it was probably somewhat normal. But now I know it was far from normal. The weirdest thing to me about gluten is how it affects every part of my body. Everything from my GI tract, which would be expected, to my mind. Regarding my GI tract symptoms, let's just say that not only was I bloated all the time, but Imodium was my best friend. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Not only that, but I needed Imodium at my side within 15 minutes of consuming anything with gluten. The last time that I accidentally ate gluten was when I was visiting relatives and had chicken that was marinated in soy sauce. We arrived at their house after a very long day of traveling, so I was starving, and I ate a lot. That night I didn't feel very well, but I powered through it, figuring that I was just tired from traveling. The next morning I was nauseous and my stomach was upset, but I decided that the day was going to be awesome. The whole day I was fighting nausea. Around mid-afternoon I could no longer fight it, and I knew that I was going to puke. I didn't want to, but it was one of those times where you know it's inevitable. TMI, but I puked that afternoon, and then we drove back to my relative's house, and then that night was just a puke fest. There's not that many tickets available for that, so it's very important to buy the tickets the day that they go on sale. That was the most severe reaction that I've had since going gluten-free, and oddly enough, it was a reaction that I hadn't even had up until that point. Which goes along with the idea that people gain some sort of resistance to gluten, but that's an idea for a whole other video. When I went gluten-free, I lost tons of weight. Some people gain weight while going gluten-free, but I lost weight. I'm not sure how much I lost because I wasn't thinking that I would lose, so I didn't bother to check my weight when I went gluten-free. However, I know that I lost around 20 pounds, and that's probably a low estimate. I can't explain why I lost so much weight going gluten-free. I'm not exactly sure what symptom that would link up to. It was probably all of the gluten-laden junk food that I cut out of my diet. 2 birds with 1 stone. In addition to no longer being my bathroom's best customer, I was also able to think clearly more specifically. About 6 months before I went gluten-free, I was tested for ADHD and predictably diagnosed with ADHD inattentive. That's the fancy, new-ish, stupid term for ADD. I was a textbook case. I couldn't pay attention to detail and would always get marked off because I missed a small detail in my schoolwork. I could never stay on one thing for any length of time unless I was hyper-focusing. I would start a million things and never finish. I always started a planner, but it would never last for more than a couple days. I always forgot things. Now, I'm not going to say that going gluten-free cured my ADHD, but I will certainly be the first to testify that it reduced my symptoms to a practically negligible amount. Anyone who knows anything about ADHD knows that it goes hand in hand with anxiety. I used to have bad anxiety. It would be about anything, and sometimes it would be in a circle. My family would go on a road trip, and I would get anxiety that my stomach was going to get upset, and that I would need to use the restroom, but I didn't want to have to stop just because of me, and that in and of itself made my stomach upset. But in addition to that, I was also constantly worrying about stupid stuff that I knew was illogical. But I couldn't help myself. I knew that I was worrying about stupid stuff that I shouldn't be worrying about, but all I was doing was worrying about it anyway. With my ADHD, my mind was constantly going a million miles an hour any time of day, and that certainly did not exclude nights. I could never sleep. I'm not going to say that I can always sleep like a baby since going gluten-free, but it has made a substantial change in my sleeping habits. So in short, going gluten-free has allowed me to look better, feel better, think better, and pay less toilet tax. That sounded better in my head. If you have any questions about the gluten-free lifestyle or anything like that, leave a comment below. I will make a video responding to the question and hopefully help out some other people as well. Thanks for watching this video full of horrible TMI things.